Welcome to the 300-foot pre-connect long line fire attack course, part of our engine company operations training series here at Las Cruces Fire Department. This course will include an overview of why we're adding this attack system to our engine companies. We'll visit each of the first dues throughout the city and show buildings that this may enhance first due capabilities. We'll get into how to load the line, how to deploy it, and then lastly we'll have a discussion on limitations and how to further our conversation on this topic. Firefighters always demand answers to the why when you change tactics, tools, or you add new capabilities. And we'll promote that discussion in our own organization by talking about fire dynamics, building construction, flawed tactics, first due options, and local case studies. Long lines are nothing new to the fire service. They go hand in hand with fire departments that embrace that culture of extinguishment. Fire departments that understand that getting water on fire as fast as possible is the solution. When you look at this Prince George's County, Maryland engine, you can see that this fire department gives this first arriving engine an assortment of tools to solve problems. When you look at this historical photo of downtown Las Cruces in the 1950s, you can see that our crews, they didn't have pre-connects back then. They only could work off of static hose beds of 2.5 inch. So whether we needed to go a stick away from the apparatus to attack a fire or 500 feet, firefighters in our organization in those years knew how to build attack systems on the fly for the problems they had. So it's nothing new even to our organization to have a long line fire attack. Modern fire dynamics absolutely dictate the need for the rapid application of water. We need to quickly stretch hand lines and apply an overwhelming amount of water to our fire environment. Fast water always needs to be our mantra. As Kurt Isaacson puts it, it's gallons per second that make the difference versus the mindset of gallons per minute. The need to occupy interior space quickly will save more lives and property than any other tactic on the fire ground. Building construction is the next dynamic we have to discuss when we look at the development of a long line fire attack system. Our 200-foot 1.75" pre-connect and the 2.5 pre-connect are going to be challenged in environments in every first due. Part of this is the result of large setbacks. We see an increasing size of the easements, especially in our commercial settings, but we can look in this second picture of a District 4 house. Not only does it have a huge setback, but a long, steep driveway, and then on top of that, once your line gets past that challenge, you're going to have huge square foot residents. Vertical multi-family dwellings, hotels, they're popping up all over the city. The traditional 1- and 2-story buildings are being replaced with 3s and 4s. It's going to challenge a 200-foot pre-connect. High-rise operations below the 3rd floor. As our SOG is stated, we will be using our engine and floors 1 and 2 in these settings. Again, the 300-foot pre-connect will help you overcome a lot of those challenges. Horizontal high-rises. You look at the last image there, that's really a high-rise set on its side. So when you have a single egress path on this alpha and you need to go further to the Bravo or Delta sides, you're going to need a long line fire attack system that helps you achieve that objective quickly. And then lastly, alleyways. To illustrate the usage of the 300-foot long line fire attack, I have a series of images that feature structures across the first dues of the city. I have a theoretical fire problem and some staging locations just to illustrate how long these distances could be, the need for immediate water, and how this attack system may benefit you at a fire in the future at these locations. Midway Plaza is one of those structures. We've had a large fire in the center occupancy of the strip mall before, and we've had the fire I'm depicting before, which was an alleyway fire that had extension to the structure. These outside to the inside fires have historically been tragic for the U.S. Fire Service, so this is a good one to illustrate when we need to get quick water on fire. We're thinking pessimistic about how big this fire could be, and we select a staging location that doesn't commit our apparatus to the alleyway. This is a good structure to look at. So we have this fire burning on the Charlie side. We have staged on the Bravo side, and that quick water philosophy is in effect here. We get the line stretched out, and it easily reaches the targeted location of the fire, where traditionally we may go 2.5, reduce it to a bundle, or take a pre-connect, fall short, and have to add a bundle. This attack system achieves success quickly. Town and Country Apartments, Madrid and Desert area. Another example of we're challenged with our staging locations here. If we were to centrally locate our engine and deploy a long line right through the center of this complex, we're going to achieve some success by getting a line deployed quickly and to a targeted fire, despite not knowing the exact location. Okay, moving to District 2, The Verge. Crews know this apartment complex very well. We all are very familiar with the challenge that those middle two structures pose to crews. We've tested 300-footer multiple times there, and even the 300-footer is challenged on a third floor fire in either one of those center structures. However, the first and second floors throughout this complex are easily reached by the 300-footer. So just a good structure in our area that the 300-footer is very effective. Montana Avenue, just west of El Paseo, we have 3 examples in a row of structures that long line fire attacks would have success at, whether it's the multifamily dwellings on the sides or the hospice facility in the middle. This attack system is going to get you water on fire quickly. County Government Center, District 3. Talked about the large easement on this structure already. There's no standpipe system. Fires burning in any compartment or any region of this building are going to be challenged by a traditional pre-connect. It's going to be an extended lay, long line situation. Moving on to District 4, Alexis Apartments. It's an unusual layout for a complex, 3 stories, high density. Fires burning in this structure are going to require a long line. Your pre-connect is going to be a gamble at this building. Staying in District 4, we got Regency Point Apartments. Complex arrangement for staircases. You're going to have long distance lays that may require you to go horizontal and vertical. 300-foot pre-connect is going to be a solution here. Now for a residential example where a 300-foot long line system is going to have success. 3330 Majestic Ridge. Again, that challenge of just getting past this large easement up a steep driveway just to be faced with a 3-story residential structure. You're going to need to take a system that's going to afford you more opportunity. Another District 4 residential example, Sundown Road. Very steep driveway. No apparatus on our fleet is going to be able to go up that driveway. We have a working garage fire. Long line is going to be a better solution to this problem, given the fact that there could be extension into the structure that line is going to go have to search for. So we're continuing to stay in District 4. You can tell the landscape of that area of town really does challenge the 200-foot pre-connect and calls for this 300-foot long line system. Good Samaritan is a true target hazard in our community. Not only is it a nursing home, a skilled nursing center, but it also has senior living, which has kitchens and they're prone to fire problems. So it's essential that we have quick water in structures and facilities like this. Looking at this line from a rule perspective, we'll go to the East Mesa, District 5. There we find houses that have large setbacks with long driveways, and they create challenges if an engine sits out on the roadway and deploys a 200-foot pre-connect. Leaving the engine on the roadway gives you more opportunity to take on shuttled water if needed, and keeps your engine from being a really expensive exposure. Moving to District 6, Village at Northrise is another target hazard. Engine 6 is challenged in this environment because they're really restricted to the entrance on the Alpha side and really nothing on the Charlie. So locating themselves directly in front of the structure, deploying that 300-foot pre-connect will allow them to reach almost every location in this structure. Let's take this attack system to District 7, Alaska Structures, large commercial manufacturing facility. The long line fire attack is going to find more success in a structure like this than our traditional pre-connect, and it's going to have water on fire ahead of our traditional extended lay. Last example, High Range Village off of Roadrunner Parkway. We had this exact fire several years ago. Engine staged here. Back on that night, we deployed 3-inch, widened it off to 2-inch and 3/4, and it was just a slow process. 1 3/4, 300-foot configuration would have solved this problem much faster. We've worked very hard over the last few years to elevate the capability of our engine companies. Eliminating the redundancy of a third 200-foot pre-connect is one of the last efforts in this change. We need to start thinking about the options that we give a first arriving engine company at a fireground. We need to build attack systems that support their tactics, their strategy. This is all about weapon selection, whether that's based on the size or type of fire you're facing or the distance you need to travel. Pre-1980s in our organization, we didn't have such thing as a crosslay. Everything was static hose beds where you built systems from the rear. That changed in the late 80s with new purchases. In the 90s, we see the beginning of the Rick line. The Becker fleet, anyone that's pulled the hand lines off the rear of this apparatus knew this was extremely difficult. And then the American LaFrance spec of 2002 continued to embrace this rear Rick line and created that redundancy in our 200-foot pre-connect system. Our new specs are going to eliminate this and move more towards hose configurations on the rear that can be expanded and adjusted based on the needs of your first dude. Flawed tactics is another source of change when it comes to the 300-foot line. We continue to use a single engine at most of our firegrounds, supplying all the hand lines from a single water source. If we seek change in this area in the future, we may find later arriving companies taking a secondary water source and having to stretch a small diameter hand line from a further distance. This 300-footer will allow those later arriving crews to put lines into service from secondary water sources quickly. We've eliminated the use of the Y appliance on extended lays. This will allow us to put this 300-footer into service more often, where in the past we would have used a 2.5 trunk line wide off with a small diameter line. Stretching short continues to plague us on firegrounds intermittently throughout the year. Again, this line gives first due options for crews and hopefully eliminates this short stretch. So let's look at some case studies from fires we've had over the past couple decades and look at it from the perspective of if the 300-foot pre-connect had been part of our capability, could things have been different? Not from a standpoint of whether the tactics used on that day were flawed. Spitz and Jasmine's a recent fire we have in our memory where an additional line was called for on the Charlie side to help control advanced fire conditions, and it came up short. So the timing of this line not being able to achieve water on fire was detrimental to the fireground. Sun News Fire. The tactics used on that day were the ones that we trained on. Trunk line, 2.5 diameter, hose packs, extending those packs and then trying to get from the Charlie side to the seat of the fire. It's a complicated operation. It takes time, and fire continues to grow in those situations. ConAgra. This is a structure we've had 2 maydays at. We're very familiar with the type of fire that we usually have in this structure involving the chili processing. On the last mayday situation, not that it was related, however, there was a short stretch situation here. Putting this longer line into operation is certainly going to be effective at this facility. We're going to continue to encounter these chili roaster fires. Parker Road Fire. Again, 3-inch trunk line was used on this day, wide off to hose packs to fight this Charlie side fire. This house has a huge easement. You're going to eat up a 200-foot pre-connect quickly. Golden Mesa, challenging 3rd floor void space fire. Extended lay was called for. The line took a long time, as it would on any day, using a trunk line, wide off, hose pack situation. Could our 300-foot rapidly advanced line up to that 3rd floor and then extended from a bundle pack achieve quicker water on fire? And then lastly, the China Buffet fire. We used trunk line, 3-inch, wide off again in this situation. We had a complex arrangement of hose at the front door, a 300-foot line leading off to the seat of the fire. Could have had quicker results of achieving water on fire. Loading procedure for the 300-foot pre-connect. Probably the most difficult part of this training program. To make it easier, think about the way the configuration is. It's 3 independent sections of hose. We're going to give them each names. One of them, the nozzle section, just a normal Minuteman finished with our Chief XD nozzles. Alongside that section of hose will be the supply. It's again a normal Minuteman. However, the Mel coupling supplies the nozzle section. And then the base layer under these 2 sections is the dump. It's a flat load. It's in a side-by-side arrangement connected to the discharge of the apparatus, and it feeds the supply section. The dump section. It's the base layer of this configuration. We're going to flat load it, 100 feet of hose. It's in a side-by-side arrangement. The crossover point needs to be at the front of the hose bed. And you're going to form a single bite right after the coupled section. When you're finished with this, you just set the Mel coupling in the dunnage area. This slide just highlights the flat load crossover point at the front of the hose bed, and then where we put the Mel coupling in the dunnage area. Let's watch a quick video on the building of the dump section. Obviously, the female has been connected to the discharge. We're making our side-by-side flat load. Our crossover points at the front of the hose bed. Now once that coupling is bedded, the next flake that comes up needs to be a bite. Form a bite. And then just continue the flat load normally. When you near the coupling, you can go ahead and throw that up in the dunnage area, and you're done. Next, you'll build the supply section. You'll start with the Mel coupling hanging down to about the tailboard area, and then just load a normal Minuteman on top of that. No bites. When you're complete with the build, set the female coupling aside, and we'll connect it. Let's watch a video of the building of the supply section. Starts with that male coupling down about the level of the beaver tail. And this is just a normal Minuteman load. The only thing unique about it is you have that long section that hangs down. There are no additional bites. The length of this Minuteman is up to you. Some crews like them a little shorter so that it goes on your shoulder better. Others prefer to load it all the way to the front of the hose bed so that it doesn't shift under normal movement and traffic. So just a normal Minuteman. It terminates when you come across the female coupling. That female coupling can just be put aside. We'll come in a little bit and connect it to the other packs. Last section is the nozzle. Start with the nozzle as flush as you can, load normally, and then set that female coupling aside. Video of the nozzle section being built. This one's very familiar to everyone. You load it just like your crosslay. If you can get your nozzle in there pretty flush, it works out nice. And just build each of the layers upon the nozzle, and you'll be done. Set that coupling aside, and we'll connect all the sections together. Now we need to connect the three sections together. And this is a failure point if done incorrectly. You may choose to make your connections as each section is built, or wait till the end. What I always tell people is just follow the water from the discharge all the way through your systems to the nozzle. That'll always get you out of trouble. There are only two connections to make. Connection number one, find the male coupling you set aside in the dunnage area and connect it to the female on the supply connection. Okay, watch a video of the dump section being connected to the supply section. Connection number two, you take the male coupling that was hanging down near the tailboard, you wrap that up over the supply stack back towards the female of the nozzle section and couple. Video of connection number two. This will be the supply section connected to the nozzle. So you take that male that was hanging down towards the beaver tail, you wrap it up tight along the supply section, and then couple it with the female that was sitting on top of the nozzle section. This is an alternative view, looking from the front of the hose bed. We've taken that dump section, the male coupling that was in the dunnage, we're connecting it to the top of the supply section Minuteman. Next, we're going to take the male that's hanging down towards the beaver tail of the supply section, wrap it up tight, and connect it to the female on top of the nozzle Minuteman section. You can dress your couplings. and then the line is ready for use. Deployment. So in most circumstances, a couple firefighters will deploy this. However, you can train in a 1 and up to a 3-person configuration. In this training, we're going to show you the 2-firefighter method followed by the single firefighter. In the 2-firefighter method, the nozzle firefighter loads the nozzle section onto the right shoulder, just like we do with any cross-lay deployment. Next, it's important for that firefighter to step away from the engine enough space to allow that supply section to drop down. The hill firefighter now comes in, loads the supply section on right shoulder, steps away from the apparatus to ensure the complete deployment of the supply section, pivots, grabs the bite, and then prepares to dump that section onto the ground and move the entire attack system to the target. Okay, now that we're managing each of the sections of this system, the hill needs to communicate to the nozzle the intention to deploy. Once that's done, the nozzle and hill can move as a unit towards the target. Along this route, the hill firefighter is going to end up completely deploying the supply section off of his or her shoulder. Once the complete supply section is deployed, the hill needs to communicate to the nozzle that now their section may start paying out. Once the nozzle firefighter stretches to the target, whatever's left on their shoulder, it's up to them to manage in a forward or reverse stretch. Two firefighter deployment model. Nozzle comes around, loads nozzle section to right shoulder, steps away to allow the heel to come in. Heel loads supply section to right shoulder, steps away, pivots, grabs the bite for the dump section, and then move as a unit to the target. Dump goes tight, release. Now the heel section is going to start paying out his shouldered hose. About when you get to that last flake, you need to communicate to the nozzle that their pack will start paying out. They've reached their target. Nozzle firefighter does a forward accordion to the target, and they're done. Every crew needs to train to the level that a single firefighter may have to deploy this entire 300-foot system by themselves. In this case, the nozzle firefighter is responsible for the management and deployment of all 3 sections. They're going to have to load both Minuteman sections to their shoulder and then manage the dump. The nozzle firefighter squares up, loads the nozzle section to right shoulder. Next loads the supply section to the left shoulder, pivots back, grabs the bite, and deploys. And here's how it looks. As that supply section ends up paying out completely, you end up with that nozzle section on your shoulder to manage. And in this example, a forward accordion was used to stretch to the target. Single firefighter deployment model. Firefighter comes around, loads the right shoulder with nozzle section, throws a flake to avoid tank entanglement. Loads supply section to left shoulder, steps away, comes over with one hand, grabs both packs, allowing that left hand to go grab the dump bite, deploys until that goes tight. Now you allow the supply sections to pay out, Continue to move towards your target. Firefighter squares up with intended entrance. In this case, selects a forward accordion and deploys to the door. 300-foot pre-connect hydraulics. Given our standard usage of key combat ready 1.88-inch diameter hose, our department rule of thumb is 25 psi per 100 feet. We have 300 feet, that gives us 75 psi. This system is going to have an Elkhart Chief XD nozzle on the end. It's 185 at 50. That gives us a total pump discharge pressure of 125. Going beyond 300 feet, we know there are instances in which this line will have to be extended using a bundle pack. Because we spec'd out a nozzle with an integral 15/16 tip, the waterway has a taper, and we have to account for 10 psi of friction loss within this shutoff. Watch episode 62, Break Apart Nozzles, on the Brass Tacks for Hard Facts series. To conclude this training, I want crews to think about their own first dues. Think about all these systems that are coming online over the next month on our engine companies. Think back about where your 200-foot pre-connect worked. Continue to use it in those locations. It's been an amazing tool for us. Look back on when we extended hose lines. Did we use a 2.5 with Ys and hose packs, and was that slow? Have we become quicker with a 2.5 and a bundle pack? Or is there opportunity in the future extending bundle packs off of 1 3/4? Sit down with your crew, go out and do your first dues, train on each of your systems. Predict the usage of each one of them. When you look at pre-connects, they come in a 100, 200, or 300-foot configuration. Understand where you're going to use each of these systems. When are you going to use the extended lay from 1 3/4 versus a 2.5? High-rise packs are coming on board in the next month. Understand where you're going to use that system. And lastly, when we get outpaced by fire conditions, sometimes we have to start right out of the gate with a deck gun. Make sure you're well versed on each one of your weapon systems, when and where you're going to use them. The 300-foot pre-connect's already been used at actual incidents. This was 2 commercial structures on fire, Idaho and Solano. The 300-foot line was able to make it to the Charlie side for exterior fire attack, make it interior, help with extension on adjacent exposures, gave the crews a lot of flexibility in their fire attack. 808 Idaho, this is a building we're very familiar with. This was ended up just being an electrical plug fire. We didn't have exact location of the apartment on arrival. We staged out on Idaho. We deployed the 300-footer from the street, and the apartment in question ended up being the very last unit on the Charlie side. The line made it all the way to that location, and we had plenty of surplus working line had we needed it to work any type of interior fire. So go out to your first due. We have a good relationship with the Verge. It's one of our most challenging places that test this line. Get permission from them, stretch the line out, understand the limitations of it, and have fun. That concludes the training on the 300-foot line. Take all your comments, questions, anything that we need to discuss to the Target Solutions forum. You'll find that on the bottom of your link bar. You'll see a 300-foot line discussion entry here in the future. And anything you need additional clarification on, feel free to contact me, email, text, phone call. Hope you enjoyed it. Good luck training.